Out of the divine unity we came. In the divine unity we live and move and have our being. To the divine unity we will return. There are no beginnings and no endings, save those we impose to cope with eternity. There is no knowledge of the great mystery, save the precious fragments we are given in recompense for our strivings. For what we receive, we give thanks, and we turn our faces to the light. May it be so. Alan Morris Large, known to everyone as Morris Large, passed away on the 9th of January 2023. He was many things to many people, and those of us here, many of us are especially aware of his great contribution to Unitarianism and to this congregation in particular. But most of all, he was a good man, and we will miss him. We will also remember him with love, and his example of wise and compassionate leadership will always be before us as we continue to grow and change. I'm going to begin with a eulogy for Morris, which was written by the Reverend Margaret Kirk, who has kindly shared it with us for this service. Morris Large was brought up in High Heaton in Newcastle. He was the youngest of two sons. He attended Cragside School before passing the entrance exam to the junior school of the Royal Grammar School, following the same path as his brother Roy 3 years before him. Roy, he subsequently passed the exam to the senior school, and Roy tells us he joined the Cubs and then the Scouts and took part in at least one of the gang shows at either the Theatre Royal or the Empire Theatre. Morris had a musical upbringing. His mother sang in the Bach choir. He took piano lessons and later violin lessons at school, where he was in the first orchestra, which was the most advanced of the 3 orchestras that the school offered to their musical students. He performed in the annual 6th form play, which in his year was The Merchant of Venice. His brother had performed 3 years previously in The Tempest, both cast in female roles, since it was, we should remember, an all-boys school. For a period of time, Morris was a member of the People's Theatre in Heaton in Newcastle and appeared in some of their productions. Morris and Joan met in 1962 at the Unitarian Church of the Divine Unity, this church here in Newcastle. He was a member of the Unitarian Young People's League. It was there that the two met when they were both attending a Unitarian conference. In the previous year, Joan had moved from her home in Bury to become a student at Sunderland Teacher Training College. In 1968, they were married at Bury Unitarian Church. Their children, Andrew was born in 1969 and Malcolm in 1977. They lived in the Gosforth area throughout their lives. Andrew remembers late-night discussions with his father when they put the world to rights, and Malcolm remembers being taken to the cinema at around the age of 7 to see back-to-back films of Superman, which thrilled them. And as a personal note, it seems rather appropriate that Morris went to see a film about a character who tries to use his considerable gifts and good qualities to make other people's lives better. He was perhaps a very Unitarian type of Superman for us. Malcolm also remembers Morris taking the young people from church to the cinema to see a Christmas film, followed by a meal at their house. Andrew's children, Zoe and Emma, were very close to their granddad. And even when in hospital, when Morris was very frail, Joan remembers how he took pleasure in doing crosswords with Zoe. Following a brief period teaching history at a private school in Morpeth, Morris studied to become an articled clerk over a period of 5 years. This involved attending various courses at a college of law. Shortly after qualifying, he worked for the solicitors Mitchell Dodds, where he specialised in litigation law. In the 1990s, he became a district judge and worked as a judge for 15 years in the county court in North Shields until he retired in 2016. His photo is still on the wall at King's Court in his district judge regalia. One of his colleagues said that he was very proud to serve the people of North Shields and that he became known affectionately as the Sheriff of the North. She described him as being a kind, encouraging and patient guide, always courteous, fair and resolute when necessary. He was always able to give support, and she adds, he reminds me of how to be a better judge. Another colleague remembers him from when he was articled at Mitchell Dobbs and says, he was a fine man and a very good lawyer, devoted to Joan and to his sons. Maurice was also a keen badminton player. I don't know how the man found time to sleep. He had so many things he was doing. And he shared his love of badminton with both his boys when they were teenagers. Joan recalls times when she first met him sending many Saturday nights in cold church halls. You had to be hardy to play badminton back then. Maurice was an essential player in the church badminton team and also one of the first boys in his school to play badminton when it became an official school sport. He also very much enjoyed motoring. Driving to France for family holidays was one of the family's great pleasures. It was something Maurice and Joan continued doing and enjoying after the boys had left home. He liked his cars and was a member of the Institute of Advanced Motorists. As a younger man, he'd spent some of his time hiking, which on one occasion led to a rather bizarre incident when he and his friend were questioned briefly in connection with the Great Train Robbery. His son Andrew recalls him saying that whilst hiking in Ireland, he and a friend had slept in a bus shelter and woken to a forest of policemen's legs. The police questioned them. Who were they and where had they come from? Presumably, they were satisfied that they were not accomplices in the audacious heist of 1966. The other thing that Maurice enjoyed was jazz. That may be a surprise to some people. Since retiring, he joined a Friday lunchtime jazz gathering organised by Newcastle's Lit and Fill Society, and on one year he and Joan enjoyed a trip to the Edinburgh Jazz Festival. He was a loyal member of our Church of the Divine Unity here. His father was treasurer here for 40 years, and Maurice was on the management committee for 50 years, which involved both regular stints as chairperson and secretary. And indeed, the lectern I am using here was presented to this church by his parents, Lambert and Greta Large, to mark their golden wedding. It's no exaggeration to say that Maurice was one of those people who is the backbone of the church. He was hugely respected and greatly valued. His presence had a warmth and a quiet authority, and he was always welcoming, which Margaret Kirk said were that she remembers those qualities on all those occasions when she herself took a service here in Newcastle. It was not uncommon for him to attend church on Sunday, be back there for a committee meeting on the Monday, and be playing badminton there on Thursday evening. I seem to recall he was quite enthusiastic about the possibility of meeting by Zoom from time to time. Perhaps that sort of thing is why. Maurice was never afraid to embrace change when it could be good for our congregation. In earlier times, he and his mother would visit the church on a Saturday evening when she went to do the flowers, as a result of which he became a good flower arranger himself. I would add now that the charity his family chose for donations in his memory, should people wish to do that, is the Northern Brainwave Appeal. He set up this charity in 1988 when he was working as a solicitor. He continued as a trustee until he became ill, and he attended regular meetings which involved travelling to Carlisle. The charity spends its money for the purchase of medical equipment for the high dependency unit at Newcastle General Hospital, and this is to help people, those working in the neurosciences department, and to help people suffering from complex neurological disorders. So as a practical note, should people wish to donate, I will send around information on how to do this online shortly afterwards, and we do have a collection plate at the back. As with so much of the work that Maurice undertook, His work with Northern Brainwave Appeal stood as another example of what Margaret Kirk describes as his loyalty, his devotion, and his commitment. And as the person who I would like to say took over from Maurice as chairperson after he stepped down, but really I think I just was another in the line of succession. No one could ever quite replace him. I would say that those qualities, loyalty, devotion, and commitment, are among those that people most associate with their memories of Maurice. So, with thanks to Margaret for sharing that with us, and with Maurice's life in memory, a good life, very well lived, shortly we shall pray. But now let us pray, and this prayer is in memory by the Reverend Cliff Reed. We gather today as a community of faith and fellowship. We are conscious today of someone who is often with us here, but who has now passed from us. We give thanks for his life and all that he brought to our worship and fellowship. We miss his unique personality, so much a part of the church and the community that we form by coming here. We thank you, Divine Unity, for Maurice's time with us. We thank you for his friendship and fellowship, for the leadership, guidance and happiness he brought to all he knew, and here in this place we remember especially everything he brought to us. We would like to give thanks both for the hard work that he did for us, for his great commitment to Unitarianism, to our congregation, but most of all to his fellow human beings and his family and friends. We are gathered here as a community. We are conscious today of someone who was often with us here, and now that he has passed from us, we know that we shall always have our memories of his life and his guiding spirit among us. Amen. When I shared news of Maurice's passing, many people got in touch to share their memories of him. He touched a great many lives. Shortly, Ben and Diana are going to read some of those out for us. I'm in the interesting position that one of them was shared by someone who is present here today, Robbie Calbrea. So with your permission, granted, Robbie, I am not going to attempt an impression of you, but I am going to read out your words. I'd also preface it by saying that part of Maurice's great wisdom was to realise that the church is not its building. We love our building, the Church of the Divine Unity, but one of the great challenges for our congregation was to try to see a way forward when it became the case that the building was really far too large for the congregation it served. And Maurice and many others worked hard for many years to try to find a good solution so that both the building and the congregation could be preserved. Robbie is here as our prospective purchaser of our building. Sorry to put you on the spot, Robbie, but that is indeed what you are. And he kindly shared these memories, which I'll now read. I have the pleasure of meeting many people in my daily business life, but unfortunately few are like Maurice Large. I'm very aware that I did not know him for as long or to anywhere near the same degree of familiarity as your congregation did. And I offer you all my most sincere condolences on the empty space he's left behind. Every conversation one had with Maurice was a fascinating and enjoyable experience. From the first time I spoke to him, he made me feel comfortable, an innate and special ability he possessed. The knowledge and experience he held on what seemed like every topic under the sun was phenomenal. He was clearly very successful in his career and well regarded at that, but there were no airs and graces about him. He was genuine in all that he said and did, and I quickly realised that any questions he asked weren't leading. He really did want to know what you thought, liked and felt. It was a privilege to have met Maurice. I am lucky to have shared the coffees and chats I did with him. He was a gentleman in the truest sense of the world, and the world is a changed place without him in it. Thank you for sharing those words with us. And Ben and Diana, if you would come up and share some more memories of Maurice.
I know a few of you are actually here in chapel and joining us online, so thank you for sharing. Catherine and David Garrett. We always enjoyed our chats with Maurice and with Joan. Whether humorous, informative, or historical, they always left you feeling you had learned something.
Reverend Alex Bradley. Very sad news. Maurice had a deep knowledge of Unitarianism and its history in the Northeast. He sent me some very interesting information on the Choppington Chapel, and he and Joan always gave the warmest of welcomes to visitors like myself, a truly lovely man. Reverend Martin Whitell. Sorry to hear this. His commitment to the Unitarian cause in Newcastle was legendary, a genuine man.
Anne Mills, former GA president. I was saddened to learn of Maurice's death. He was a true gentleman, a committed member of Newcastle Unitarians, and a loyal supporter of his church community. He will be greatly missed by everyone who knew him.
Chris Gardner, former organist at Newcastle upon Tyne Unitarians. I always personally recall Maurice as an appreciative and friendly supporter of my work at Ellison Place when I served as organist there for 4 years or so. He was a pillar of the Unitarian community there, always welcoming to everyone. Rest in peace. Joe Hooper. I once contacted Maurice to let him know that I had known his friend Roy Hislop when we were boys, growing up in Clarence Street in Shieldfield in the 1950s. Roy and his parents were members of the congregation at the Church of the Divine Unity, and Roy himself later became Maurice's best man when he married Joan. Maurice responded by sending me a copy of a photograph taken in about 1960, when the church's former chairperson Ron Coulson was putting on a play, and Maurice and Roy had been conscripted as stagehands. They are shown relaxing on the set. Maurice asked me what I thought of how he looked in the photo. I said that, although he was obviously very young at the time, it hinted at the glories of male beauty that were about to be revealed. His reply was, "Watch it."
Jean Reeve. Derek and I remember our conversations with Maurice at coffee time after services, which were wide-ranging and always interesting. A fount of knowledge about the church, of course, and so interesting to hear about it when he was a young man.
And finally, Jamie Scott. Maurice was, in no small part, key to my finding spiritual autonomy through the Unitarian community. He was always there with a smile and a quip, but also with sound advice and guidance. I'm not sure I ever actually sought it directly. Maurice's guidance was more on a social level, where he excelled in making you feel comfortable in exploring, always feeling nourished by his kindness and good-natured presence. He will be sorely missed, and I am sorry not to be able to be with you today in celebrating his life.
And now we're going to have a little space within our service to share memories of Maurice among ourselves. Unitarians traditionally have a part in our service called Candles of Joy and Concern, where if people wish to, they may come forth and light a candle and speak what is in your heart if you want, or to simply light it in silence, or you may remain seated and reflect on your thoughts as you choose. Today we are having memorial candles, and this is an opportunity, if people wish to come forth, light a candle. We do have some electric candles if people prefer them. And just if you wish, say any thoughts you wish to share about Maurice. Also, if there is anyone online who would like me to light a candle and or to read out any words on your behalf, please do put something in the chat and Diana will let me know. So obviously I should also add that as a practical note, we are recording the service, but this part of the service is not going to be shared within the recording. It is private among those of us here physically and online. This is literally let me have this very long. So sometimes I think it's fair to say that when someone passes out of your life, I think many of us, perhaps all of us, feel that great longing which we all know and feel no matter how often we saw that person, we wish you could have one last conversation with them whilst knowing that that is no longer a possibility. Suppose as a person who is a good chairperson and you pass a long time in Unitarians, I would like to have asked Boris. I always felt that as he had been a Unitarian since birth, and I am not. I was Methodist for a while, and came to find Unitarianism as so many people do. It's always seemed to me that Boris knew everything there was to know. I'd like to have perhaps asked him, Boris, when you became the chair, did all the things you did for the church, you stand there wondering what it was you were supposed to be doing, and how on earth you'd ever possibly match up to everybody else who came before you. I have absolutely no idea what Boris was said, because he was past promise. We'll always remember him. I wonder if perhaps he would have said, yes, but don't worry, you just have to do the best that you can, and everything else will proceed from there. I hoped that perhaps the two of us might be able to reconnect as friends, because so many of our conversations were about the business of the church. But in the end, we never quite have as long with people as we wish we could have, because it is the nature of human life that life is always changing. In the end, we treasure our memories of those who have left us. I'm going to treasure mine, Morris. And Morris, I don't know that any of us knows for certain what happened next. But perhaps I like to picture you now, somewhere warm, perhaps listening to jazz or driving down a country lane, knowing that we're thinking about you and we treasure the time we spent with you. And on the off, if you are indeed listening, Morris, I'd just like to say a very big thank you. Not just for everything you did for the church, but for being a good person who are you. Thank you, Morris.
Thank you, Morris. It's almost 30 years since I first met Morris. I'd just like to share a couple of recollections. One of the things that I'll always be grateful to Morris for is his forays into the history of the church. We heard that Alex Bradley noted his historical explorations. But I'm very mindful that going back to 1662, when some of the dissenters from the Act of Uniformity founded a distinctive Unitarian presence in Newcastle, this was a great moment. And the present church here today is, of course, the current link in an unbroken chain over 350 years of Unitarianism in Newcastle. That's a good story. And, we think of the champions of this free-ranging perspectives on religion. It's a great story, and it's one that Morris told. By keeping us mindful of the history of the church, I always felt that he gave us a sense of being grounded. He gave us a sense of being an integral part of that rich heritage of Unitarianism in Newcastle. And open-minded, liberal thinking. I think that was great for him to acknowledge that. But as well as being an historian, he was, of course, a part of the history. And as everybody has already commented, his leadership was absolutely immense, year after year after year. And so ably supported by Joe. I learned many things from watching him and his leadership. But at Sunday services, I do remember that Morris was a pretty snappy dresser. He wore suits with some rather dashing ties, very smart, but that seeming formality could never mask, of course, his abundant good humour and fun. And talking of fun, I would just like to mention the strange case of Morris and badminton. We heard earlier about Morris and badminton, and I know that the general view is that he was a very keen badminton player, but I sometimes wondered about that, because the evidence from the Badminton Club annual reports, which Morris presented each year to the annual general meeting, the evidence is curious to say the least. Each year was the same. About 10% of Morris's report would indeed be about badminton. The other 90% was details of all the suppers they had together and the meals out they had. I have to say, it seemed to me more like a dining club masquerading as a badminton club. Well, I tell this tale because it seemed to epitomise that wonderful characteristic in Morris that I so much admired. Just his love of life and making it such good fun. Thank you, Morris.
Thank you to all who have shared. Soon we will be able, for those of us who are here together and have some refreshments, and if we have more memories or thoughts we wish to discuss with each other, we can do that. I do have one final one to share. This is from Hazel Warhurst, who is here. Hazel, I'm afraid with your permission, I'm going to have to read only an excerpt from this. You have shared some lovely memories with us, and perhaps in future we'll be able to read it all. But these are some lovely memories you have here of Morris in his young life as a young man and even a boy, because Hazel's memories of Morris go back a long way to when the two were part of the Sunday school here at Newcastle-on-Tyne Unitarians, the Church of the Divine Unity. First of all, under the guidance of Evelyn Eden and her helpers upstairs in the primary department. Later, the senior department held their own Sunday morning worship and activities in the Durant Hall with Arthur Jones and a group of teachers. I rather wish I had been able to share the photograph that was sent through by Joe of Morris as a young man sitting on the stage. I'll have to try and circulate that at some point. After the appointment of the Reverend John Storer in the early 1960s, the opportunities for Morris, for Hazel, and for the other teenagers within the church blossomed. They took part in Saturday evening youth activities and became a newly formed branch of the Unitarian Young People's League. Discussion groups and table tennis usually followed the Sunday evening services, and joined with the Stockton Unitarian Young People's League from time to time at dances or at one or other of the two churches. Outdoor activities such as hikes were very popular, particularly the midnight ones introduced by the minister. They would catch a late bus out of Newcastle to a country location and then walk back through the dawn before catching the bus home again. Looking back, the parents involved must have been very trusting. There were no such things as CRB checks in those days. There are many other memories here. I'll have to leave you with the tantalising thought that at some point we shall share the news of the exhibition from Newbiggin to Wooler and an encounter with the Royal Oak Hotel, Morris's time carol singing, leading worship at Choppington Church, and the many things that Morris did. I'd just like to say, quoting Hazel, Morris worked so hard over the years to secure the future of this congregation. It is sad that he did not see the proposed changes to our building come fully to fruition. He once told of a dream, or possibly a nightmare, where he woke up one morning to find that he and Joan were the only members left. But happily, thanks to the hard work of everyone who works to keep our congregation going, the future of Newcastle-on-Tyne Unitarians looks like a positive one. And now our benediction. This is for a memorial service by the Reverend Joel Miller. spirit of life and love. Under the vast spiral of time and space, surrounded by the simple blessings of a community of care and love, we carry these memories of Maurice Large with us back to the community and life he loved. We pray. Grant us strength, wisdom, and thanksgiving. Give us strength to speak of our lives so that each day yet to come, we find more compassion, more understanding, more of the loving kindness that fills our world with joy and laughter. Give us courage to cherish one another so that we use our lives to heal instead of forget, and lead ourselves to the possibility of forgiveness instead of defiance. And we give thanks for Maurice Large. His memory lives on in the great spirit of life that surrounds us, and his memory, cherished by us, dwells deeply throughout us by the person he was and still is in our hearts. We have celebrated the cycles of life in which we find ourselves, celebrating life at its beginning and its end, both always present among us. Spirit of love and life. Remind us to love life as fully as we are able. Remind us to treasure our friends and families as they treasured their friends and families. Even though we must bid them farewell, the gift of their life is a treasure that cannot be ungiven. We celebrate the life Maurice Large lived among us. Now his soul is at rest with you. May it be so. Please be seated. Amen. And with everyone's permission, before we go and enjoy some more time together, I would like us to have one final reading. And Jane is kindly going to read this for us, but I'd like to just briefly introduce it by saying that this was read at the funeral of another member of our congregation, Eleanor Broad, who is remembered on the chair here behind. Maurice chose this, I think, after discussion with Eleanor, and I thought it would be lovely for us to hear it here today before we sing our final hymn and disperse. So Jane, if you would read for us.
Just to say that I am the newest member of the community, and unfortunately the only one here who didn't know Maurice. But after what I've heard about him, I wish I had. Right. The Dragonfly by Anonymous. Once in a pond under the lily pads, there lived a water beetle in a community of water beetles. They live a simple life with few disturbances. Once in a while, sadness would come to the community when one of their fellow beetles would climb the stem of the lily pad and would not be seen again. They knew when this happened, their friend was gone forever. Then, one day, one little beetle felt an irresistible urge to climb up that stem. However, she was determined she would not leave forever. She would come back and tell her friends what she found at the top. When she reached the top and climbed out of the water onto the surface of the lily pad, she was so tired and the sun was so warm, she decided she must take a nap. As she slept, her body changed, and when she woke up, she had turned into a beautiful blue-tailed dragonfly with broad wings and a slender body designed for flying. So fly she did, and as she soared, she saw the beauty of a whole new world and a far superior way of life to what she had ever known existed. Then she remembered her beetle friends and how they thought she was gone forever. She wanted to go back to tell them that she was now more alive than she had been before she left. Her life had not ended, but changed. But her new body would not go down into the water. She could not get back to tell her friends the good news. Then she understood that their time would come when they too would know what she now knew. So she raised her wings and flew off into her joyous new life.